Good day, everyone. I am Fatima Matano from the Group 7, and we will be discussing about the global trade and investment. So, to introduce our topic, global trade refers to the exchange of goods and services across international borders. It allows countries to specialize in producing what they are best at and import what they need. So, under global trade, we have the imports and exports, where countries sell goods and buy goods from other nations. We also have comparative advantage, where countries produce goods where they have an efficiency advantage. We also have trade agreements, where nations create treaties like NAFTA, WTO agreements to facilitate trade. We also have the tariffs and trade barriers, where governments impose tariffs, which are taxes on imports, and quotas, which are limits on imports to protect their domestic industry. So global trade has different benefits. So first, we have the access to variety of goods and services, economic growth and job creation, increased market competition that may lead to innovation, lower costs for consumers. But despite the good and many benefits, the global trade also have different challenges, like trade imbalances, where one country imports more than it exports, dependency on other nations for key resources, and job losses in industries that can't compete globally. So next we have global investments. So it refers to the flow of capital across borders, where businesses and individuals invest in foreign assets such as stocks, bonds, and businesses. So there are different types of global investments, such as the foreign direct investments, or the FDI. This is when a company establishes operations in another country, like building a factory. Next type, we have the portfolio investments. This is buying stocks or bonds of foreign companies or governments. Then we have the remittances. This is where workers in one country send money back to their home country. So, like global trade, global investments also have benefits like economic growth and infrastructure development, technology transfer and knowledge sharing, and job creation in host countries. So it also has challenges like political and economic instability in foreign markets, exchange rate fluctuations affecting investment returns, risk of exploitations by multinational corporations. So global trade and investments are interconnected, and they drive economic growth worldwide. However, they also come with risks and challenges that needs to be managed through policies, regulations, and international cooperation. So next, under the global trade and investments, we have this subtopic, the political economy of international trade. So why do governments intervene in international trade? So there are two arguments for government intervention, which are the political and economic arguments. So under sa political arguments, these are concerned with protecting the interests of certain groups within a nation, which are normally the producers, often at the expense of the other groups, which are normally the consumers. So the economic arguments naman are typically concerned with boosting the overall wealth of a nation. This is to the benefit of all, both for the producers and consumers. So, how do governments intervene in markets or international trade? So, first is through tariffs. Second, subsidies. Third, import quota. Next, the voluntary export restraints, the local content requirements, the administrative policies, and the anti-dumping policies, which can also be called as the countervailing duty. So when should governments avoid using trade barriers? So Um, Paul Krugman argued that strategic trade policies aimed at establishing domestic firms in a dominant position in a global industry are beggar-thy neighbor policies that boost national income at the expense of other countries. So these countries are those that attempt to use such policies will probably provoke retaliation. So he also argued that since special interest groups can influence governments, strategic trade policy is almost certain to be captured by such groups who will distort it to their own ends. So, how has the current world trading system emerged? So, until the Great Depression of the 1930s, most countries had some degree of protectionism, which is under the Smoot-Hawley tariff, which was made in the 1930s. So after the Second World War, the US and other nations realized the value of freer trade and they established the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which can also be called as GATT, which is a multilateral agreement to liberalize trade. So in the 1980s and the early 1990s, protectionist trends emerged, like Japan's perceived protectionist or neo-mercantilist policies that created a very intense political pressure in other countries. Um, During that time, then the U.S. made persistent trade deficits, and the use of non-tariff barriers increased. So after that, the Uruguay round of GATT negotiations began in 1986, which focused on first the intellectual property, where it is going beyond manufactured goods to address trade issues related to services and intellectual property and agriculture. So second, the World Trade Organization. So it was hoped that the enforcement mechanisms would make the WTO a more effective policeman of government trade rules. So the WTO encompassed the GATT along with two sister organizations, the General Agreement on Trade in Services and the Agreement on Trade-related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights. So the WTO has emerged as an effective advocate and facilitator of future trade deals, particularly in areas such as services. And so far, the WTO's policy and enforcement mechanisms are having a positive effect. So most countries have adopted the WTO's recommendations for trade disputes. So the WTO has become a magnet for various groups protesting free trade. And the current agenda of the WTO focused on the rise of anti-dumping policies, the high level of protectionism in agriculture, the lack of strong protection for intellectual property rights in many nations, and continued high tariffs on non-agricultural goods and services in many nations. So the next topic will be the foreign direct investment, which will be discussed by Ms. Ozaraga.
So the next topic is the foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment is an investment made by firms or governments from one country into another country to establish business operations. Foreign direct investment is when a company from one country invests in a business in another country to gain control or significant influence over it. This is most likely a multinational corporation na nag-expand ng business nila sa ibang bansa. In foreign direct investment, meron tayong tinatawag na greenfield and brownfield investments. Greenfield investment is when a company build a new factory in another country. And brownfield investment is when a company buy or acquire an existing company in another country. So these are some examples of multinational corporations. So these companies invest in other countries to expand their markets, access resources, and reduce production costs. So itong companies na to is meron dito sa Pilipinas pero hindi originated dito sa Pilipinas. Yung Unilever is originated siya from United Kingdom. The Coca-Cola and Citibank are both originated from United States. The Nestle is originated from Switzerland, and Toyota and Mitsubishi are both originated from Japan. Next is the different types of foreign direct investment. First is horizontal. Horizontal foreign direct investment means expanding operations overseas to replicate existing production. So it is like a company opening a factory in another country to make the same products they make in their country. Next is the vertical. Vertical foreign direct investment means investing in a foreign country to perform a different stage of the production process for cost efficiency. So this might involve a company setting up a factory in a country with lower labor costs to manufacture components for their products. Next is the conglomerate. Conglomerate foreign direct investment means venturing into diverse, unrelated industries in foreign markets. So this is when a company invests in businesses that are completely different from their core business. This is often to diversify their portfolio. And lastly, the platform. Platform foreign direct investment means investing internationally to leverage as an export hub. So this involves using a foreign location as a base to export goods to other markets. Next is the advantages and disadvantages of foreign direct investment. So foreign direct investment offers several advantages. First is the economic growth. Foreign direct investment can stimulate economic growth by creating jobs and increasing investment. Next is human capital development. Foreign direct investment often leads to improved skills and training for the local workforce. Next is technology. Foreign direct investment can bring new technologies and production methods to the host country, which makes local businesses more efficient and productive. Next is increase in exports. Foreign direct investment can boost exports from the host country. The factory produces goods that are sold all over the world, which brings in money from other countries. Next is exchange rate stability. Foreign direct investment can help stabilize exchange rates. Next is improved capital flow. The foreign direct investment brings in much needed capital. Next is the creation of a competitive market. Foreign direct investment can increase competition and improve the efficiency of the market. And lastly is the climate. Foreign direct investment can improve the business climate of the host country because sometimes these foreign businesses or companies invest in environmental friendly projects which helps to protect the planet or the environment. Next is the disadvantages or the potential disadvantages of foreign direct investment. First is the hindrance of domestic investment. Foreign direct investment can sometimes crowd out domestic investment, and local businesses might struggle to compete with these bigger foreign companies, which potentially leads to some of them to close down. Next is risk from political changes. Foreign direct investment is vulnerable to political instability and changes in government policy. If the government changes or there is political instability, the foreign company might leave and take away jobs and investments. Next is negative exchange rates. Fluctuations in exchange rates can impact the profitability of foreign direct investment, which potentially leads to job losses. Next is higher cost. Investing in a foreign country can be more expensive than just exporting goods. So companies might spend more on machines and technology than on paying workers' wages. Next is economic non-viability. Investing in a foreign country can be expensive. Sometimes the investment doesn't make enough money to cover the costs, which leads to a loss. Next is expropriation. A host government might seize a foreign company's assets such as factories, land, and etc. So this is a big risk for investors, especially in politically unstable countries. Next is modern day economic colonialism. So some critics argue that foreign direct investment might take unfair advantage of a country, which similar to how colonialism exploited countries in the past. So this fear involves power imbalances and potential for unfair practices. And lastly is the poor performance. So some multinational corporations or companies have been criticized for having poor working conditions or treating workers unfairly in their foreign factories.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Naomi, for discussing about foreign direct investment. Now let's proceed about trade policies. First, let's familiarize with these words so that we can further understand the preceding topics. First is tariff. So this is the taxes on imported goods to make them more expensive than local products. So this encourages customers or consumers rather to buy local items and helps protect local industries. Second is non-tariff barriers or NTBs. So these include rules like import quotas or the limitation of how much can be imported, licensing requirements, and quality standards that can prevent or limit the flow of goods. Third is subsidies. So this is the financial support given by governments to help local businesses stay competitive in global markets. For example, subsidies to farmers, with their goods so that it can be cheaper internationally. And last is trade agreement. So this is deals between countries, for example, the NAFTA, EU, to lower or reduce the trade barriers and for it to make it easier to do business across the countries. Now, let's discuss what really is trade policies. So, trade policies are rules, practices, laws that countries use to manage their imports or the goods that is brought into the country and export, which is goods that is sold to other countries. So, these include tariffs, quotas, subsidies, and trade agreements that we've discussed kanina. So these policies directly impact global trade and investment by determining the flow of goods, services, capitals, and labor rather across the country. This is also the policies that affect jobs, businesses, and economies worldwide. There is mainly two types of trade policies. First is trade liberalization, which is free trade, and second, protectionism, which is trade restrictions. Let's further discuss about trade liberalization or free trade. So this is about reducing barriers to trade, like reducing the tariffs, quotas, and regulations to encourage free movement of goods and services between countries. So there are advantages and disadvantages of these policies. So first advantage is it is cheaper goods for customers since bababaan nila yung tariffs. So goods from other countries can be more cheaper to the consumer of another country. Second is more opportunities and foreign investment. So since businesses can trade or can sell their products abroad, this means that mas marami yung customers nila or possible customers nila, and yung mga foreign investors, mas madali para sa kanila mag-invest sa another country with this policy. And third is economic growth. So free trade allows countries to specialize in what they do best and export kung ano yung best product nila to another country, leading to faster economic growth. Now, let's discuss about the disadvantages of this policy. First is local businesses may struggle. So since mas open yung isang bansa sa trading, possible na mas maraming competitors. So yung mga local businesses or domestic companies, mas mahirap para sa kanila makipagkompetensya doon sa isang bansa. Second is job losses. Since mas marami yung workers in industries, this could lead to losing their jobs since they can't compete internationally. And third, dependency on imports. So developing countries might end up relying too much on foreign goods, which could hurt their domestic industries in the long run. For example, is yung the Vietnam exports a lot of coffee due to free trade. Pero yung farmers sa kanila, yung farmers may face competition from cheaper coffee export from Brazil and Colombia, which can make it harder for them to compete. Next is protectionism or trade restriction. So this refers to policies that protect local industries from foreign competition. This include tariffs, quotas, and subsidies for domestic businesses. The advantages of these policies is it protects local businesses since tinutulungan niya yung business to stay competitive by shielding them from cheaper imports, and also job preservation. It protects jobs and industries that are not able to compete with foreign competitors, and also supports domestic industry growth. Mas in-encourage nila yung country nila to develop industries that can be competitive on a global scale in the future. On the other hand, it can cause a higher prices for consumers. So when tariff and quotas are placed on foreign goods, domestic prices can rise or increase, meaning the consumers pay more for products. Also, less variety. So with protectionism in place, consumers have fewer choices as foreign goods are limited. And also, trade wars. Other countries may retaliate by imposing their own tariffs, leading to trade wars that harm both economies. For example, India raised import taxes on foreign smartphones to protect local brands like Micromax. While this helps local businesses, it makes foreign brands like iPhones more expensive for the consumers. Now we're done discussing about the two main types of trade policies. Let's discuss now the role of the WTO and trade agreements. So WTO, or World Trade Organization, oversees global trade rules and helps resolve disputes between countries. It aims to make trade fairer and reduce barriers. However, not all countries benefit equally from these systems. Example of trade agreements are the NAFTA or USMCA now, the EU, and ASEAN. So NAFTA or USMCA is a trade deal between the US, Canada, and Mexico to eliminate tariffs and create easier trade flows. EU or European Union is a group of European countries that share common trade rules, making it easier for businesses to trade within the EU. And also ASEAN, a regional group of Southeast Asian nations working together to improve trade. So all of these trade agreements is helping countries for them to easily um, trade with each other. Now the impact on developing and developed countries. So trade policies have different effects on developed and developing countries. In developed countries, like the US and EU, usually have the resources to shape the global trade rules in their favor. These nations often benefit from trade liberalization because they have stronger and more competitive industries. On the other hand, the developing countries faces challenges like unfair competition and trade dependency. So like Africa, they often face challenges like low income levels, fewer competitive industries, and a heavy reliance on imports. So they struggle to compete with rich countries because they are being subsidized in their industries. So all of these topics are crucial because they determine how goods and services move between countries, shaping global economies. So the key takeaway for this topic is both free trade and protectionism have advantages and disadvantages. The WTO and trade agreement helps to regulate the trade, but richer countries rather often have the upper hand, while the developing countries need fairer trade policies to compete on a global scale.